Well, wouldn't you know it? At some point, um, I ran out of memory, and I had to shuffle some things around for storage issues. But okay, um, it's too bad because I did explain a lot, but maybe I'm talking too much anyway. So let me get down into it. Essentially, I don't know what I captured or didn't, and I'm not going to watch it. I'm just going to kind of pick up where I believe I left off. So I drew this triangle on the ground, and the triangle is an equilateral triangle. Maybe you can see that better if I stand up. And I didn't really start the ritual. I don't have to like stay in this protection circle, but that's what the protection circle looks like. And this is the summoning triangle. So it's just that this particular entity communicated with me through various methods, and I figured out that this is the appropriate symbol to put on the ground. But an equilateral triangle is something that it can happen in nature, in physical nature, because of crystals. And anytime you have three spheres of the same size and you put them where they're touching each other, then the center of those spheres will also form, those 3 points also form an equilateral triangle, which is how I drew this one. So it can exist outside of like human intention, but it's unlikely. And this one's clearly drawn or made by something that is, maca root powder. And so I chose these items for a specific reason. These are symbolic offerings. The offerings are not necessarily going to be like consumed or used in any real way. But this entity that I'm contacting is specifically, actually, I got to tell you something, which is this entity started contacting me at first. It's not, I didn't just, choose an entity that I want to contact. It just kept coming to me in these symbolic ways. And through divination, I've gotten into divination where I was using, tarot cards. I've done some tarot card readings on this channel, and that's my only deck of tarot cards. So divination, if you don't have, I've said this before, but if you don't have a spiritual belief, divination still makes sense. It's like if you're totally agnostic or like just only believe in secular thought, it's essentially like similar to a Rorschach test. It's choosing a card at random will make it so that you have, some kind of like free association with what the meaning of that card is. Even if you don't know anything about tarot cards, it's like that that particular card might just draw up some thoughts and feelings that you have. And what that's doing is taking something from your subconscious mind and now bringing it forward into your conscious mind, where you can think about it and manipulate it in some way. And so divination, magic, doesn't have to be considered magic if you're uncomfortable with that ever. But I've definitely been coming around about that, where I feel a lot more comfortable talking about magic in general. So this entity is something that kept coming up through the tarot cards, particularly for some reason, the Sun card, the Chariot, the High Priestess, and the Magician. So that inspired me to do some research on magic because of the Magician and the High Priestess card, and figure out why this entity that I keep associating with the Sun card is so interesting to me. What would I, in the things that were on my mind that I was like free associating with the tarot cards, every time I was messing with the tarot cards and I was worried about something and thinking about something I wanted to figure out, and it's in particular, I was thinking about money. Why have I made certain decisions about money? I have certain money struggles that I am aware of why I keep making the same types of decisions and mistakes when it comes to money. And I need to change my attitude about that. And, what is my higher self is telling me that I need an advisor. But as soon as I started looking to divination, when I was like, I'm doing a tarot card reading, I played with the tarot cards because I was trying to teach myself about tarot cards. But over the last year or so, I've been like, I just absentmindedly flip over tarot cards sometimes and just look at them and contemplate them and look them up on the internet and stuff like that. And I figured out that whenever this entity was trying to communicate with me, I was specifically worried about money. And that's what the money in this offering triangle represents. And, there's this candle, and I don't know if you can see it right there, but I've also carved a sigil into the candle that represents the specific entity that I had to do a lot of research to figure that one out because I didn't know what this entity was at first. But I've been asked not to name the entity here for some reason. But and then this animal skull that I found one time in the woods and this feather that I found represent wisdom and communication, which is another thing that I kept thinking about. It's like certain relationships I have in my life when I was thinking to myself, like, what am I working on with specific problems in my life? They have to do with wisdom and communication. And then it's like, there are some things I've been struggling with lately where I feel like I am not sure if certain things are worth the sacrifice, and I need to have a little bit more wisdom about when and how to sacrifice. So that is a little bit of blood. And I have been told that the blood has to still be alive at the time that I light this candle. So you can see I've lit the candle before because I sort of did a preliminary experiment with doing this kind of ritual. But once I had a little bit of success with it, I was like, okay, I'm completely starting this over with much more intention and deliberate setup. So basically, the same way that the tarot cards work, where it's like your subconscious mind will make associations, and you have to have your subconscious mind essentially is your beliefs. And the way I found in my research, it's essentially it's hard to explain, but it's like your conscious mind was evolved to reassess constantly. Like, is this a good decision? Am I going to be safe? Will I eat poisonous food by accident? Will I be exposed to someone attacking me or an animal attacking me? Will I fall off something dangerous and injure myself? So you're constantly reassessing in almost like this nervous way. But your subconscious mind is almost the opposite. It's like things that would be inefficient and sort of a waste of time to sit there contemplating and reassessing all the time get pushed down into your subconscious mind so that they can still operate. You can still use that knowledge and make those decisions, but you just don't get bogged down in weighing the options. And because of that, your subconscious mind thinks a lot more on the symbolic, metaphorical level, and just thinks in greater concepts and sometimes abstract concepts or metaphysical concepts. So, your subconscious mind is very real, but it's all in. Nothing gets into the subconscious mind in the first place unless you believe it. But at the same time, since it thinks in symbolic terms, it's pretty easy to manipulate your subconscious mind. And that is the purpose of ritual. When you start doing a ritual, even if you doubt it somewhat with your conscious mind, your subconscious mind will have a much clearer memory, because drawing this triangle, buying the black candle and writing the sigil on the side of it, and choosing which items to put as offerings within the triangle and the whole 9 yards, right? I had to set that up with such intention that there's no way my subconscious mind is unaware of it. And so now it's like, even if it strains credulity at the conscious level, the subconscious level is already beginning to believe. And that will make it so much easier to communicate with this entity who has been communicating with me through like tarot card associations and dreams and coincidental things happening, synchronicities, they call it. So that's what that summoning triangle is about. And I'm about to light it. And when I do light it, I have to then stay within this salt circle. So you'll notice some things like I just couldn't fit that pillow in there, but I do have another pillow that's in there. So I'm gonna stay in the circle until the candle finishes burning, which will be hours and hours, and it's already 12:12 at night, if you can read that. So I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to stay in the circle for quite some time. So I might even fall asleep in there. So I have a little rolled up black towel, and this silk pillowcase over that. But then this is like a cotton one that's a little more absorbent, and that's like a much thicker, fluffier pillow, like a firmer pillow. And that one's like a feathered down pillow. So those are just for comfort's sake, but also this entity isn't from our material reality, and it's also not things that are in the spiritual world but share a mental existence with us as physical beings. Like how it's difficult for us as physical beings to completely imagine the spiritual world. Like, we know some things are metaphysically true or spiritually real depending on your experience of reality, but you can't directly use your physical eyes, for example, to look around the spiritual world. You have to use your inner mind's eye or your imagination to fill in the blank so that you can navigate the spiritual world at all, which is why it's so difficult for some people to even believe it's real. But I've definitely come around a lot more recently about that, so I'm very sympathetic to people who just like don't believe in a spiritual reality. But it's at least metaphorically true, and that's so those people can still, enjoy watching this kind of content, I think. But I very much relate to people who just like are atheist or agnostic. So I like to include those mentalities, people who might watch that with that perspective, because I think this type of ritual is useful nonetheless. You don't even have to do it yourself or something like that, but it's an interesting train of thought nonetheless, even if you don't believe that it's doing anything in practical reality. But it's definitely doing something with your mind. We can all agree, right? And I think consciousness, we all agree, has some sort of like theory of mind going on, that there's a mental reality that we all sort of have to ourselves, but is clearly able to be influenced and shared across other people's minds too. Like, we can sort of bridge the gap, but we use a lot of times physical things like language and writing and other forms of media to kind of get our ideas from our mind into someone else's mind, right? So what is happening sometimes is that there are things in the spiritual world who, as difficult for us to perceive the spiritual plane of reality, it's difficult for them to perceive the physical plane of reality. So we're just as weird to them. Like, in some ways, spiritual beings are afraid of us as physical beings, that it's like we're like freaky or something to them. It's like hard to explain. But so they also aren't living with linear time the way that we are, or at least they have like it. Well, for one thing, it's difficult to say offhand some kind of generalization about spiritual entities. It's like the same way that like there's all these different life forms on Earth. That's how varied and like multifaceted all these different forms of spiritual beings can be. And so I was also saying the same way that we have, so this is weird to me now because I recorded so much stuff and I don't know if I'm like said this already, but the same way that your body is made up by like human cells with DNA, there's also microflora and microfauna inside of you. Like there's microorganisms to the point of an entire ecosystem of them, and they outnumber your human cells. And that's actually part of you as a living thing, because if you didn't have these microorganisms, you couldn't digest food properly, you would get sick, you would have immune system problems, you'd actually have trouble thinking the same way because you need your gut flora to be a certain way in order for your brain to communicate with the rest of your body. So it just goes on and on, that it's like the point being you have a higher self, which is essentially the consciousness that is inhabiting you. And so like in like Western religions, it's like a soul, you have a higher self, but you also have all these other entities and they're varying levels of being conscious. Some of them are just a very low level entity and they serve all these different functions, but you can also have parasitic ones or predatory entities that can attack you spiritually. So, drawing this symbol is, and then etching on the side of the candle, I've etched a certain sigil so that like intelligent entities in the spiritual world might see that symbol and be respectful and just stay away from this. And once I light it, it will actually attract the attention. And it's difficult for these spiritual beings to navigate physical reality. Like they don't really see it the same way we do. Topic for another time. And then also temporal reality. They're not like living linear time the same way. So by lighting the candle, which I should probably do before that blood dries, but by lighting the candle, it then makes it so that these three things that I want to discuss will now be symbolically, and like the way the spiritual realm works is by symbolism, basically. Similar to like the subconscious mind, like it doesn't only work by symbolism, but that's like the bridging the gap from the physical world to the spiritual world is the mental world. And that's how you kind of like put this, when I make a light, it's illuminating these three things that I want to discuss. And it's the nature of communication with a spiritual entity also. It's like this spiritual entity who asked to remain unnamed, at least on the video, but it's like they want to discuss those things with me as well. So when I started getting sort of messages in my dreams and stuff like that, I was like, why is this being trying to communicate with me? And it's because of these three things. I need to change how I have been handling the concept of money, the concept of wisdom, basically. It's like communication in death, basically. The feather symbolizes communication, like, flight, being able to send a message from one place to another, right? And then death, which is like, the mystery of something being alive and then not being alive. And it obviously, something is changing that in that state that isn't the same as like matter changing states from like liquid to solid or liquid to gas or something like that, right? It's like a state of life is that it can be alive or then dead. And it's like that contemplation of that is a symbol of wisdom. And I just am using an animal skull because I found the animal skull, But and I've explained that the blood is about sacrifice, but it's also another way to look at the blood is that it's like it's putting something that is from my body into it, so that it's like I'm the one that's trying to communicate here, Because it might be a little bit confusing because if this entity, I lit the candle and now it's like might show up and be like, why is there this raccoon skull or cat skull or whatever this is? I found it in the wild, so I can't say what it is. I don't know what it is. And $5 bill, a little more colorful if I put it the number 5 up, but I don't want it to be the entity to think that there's like some kind of deep symbolism in the number 5, so I flipped it over, but I guess it doesn't matter too much. So, now that I lit it, it's like I'm going to get inside the protection circle. So let's take a little tour of the protection circle, and, I'm going to start off by saying that you might notice there are some things outside of the protection circle. So these are offerings that, first of all, you might notice in that potted plant in the middle, it's like a jade plant. It's kind of damaged in the middle. That's because I frequently burn things. When I need to destroy something or burn something as a symbolic offering, then that's where I'm going to burn it. And I've already done that a few times other days. So, that's what I do with that. And then, berries are something that if, let's say you've never existed in the physical realm, or you haven't for quite some time, then one of the many pleasures would be eating food. So that's like the berry is something that is, the interesting thing about fruit is that plants evolved to grow fruit for the sole purpose of like other life forms eating it. It's not like a lot of other things where you're like eating and destroying the thing by eating it. It's like a berry is meant to be eaten, so it's very benign and kind. And it's like by putting it outside of the triangle, but also outside of my protection circle, it is meant to be shared. So at any point during the ritual, if I want to, I might eat some of the berries. And then this is a cutting of parsley. It's quite a lot of parsley, but I found that I can keep parsley alive even in my refrigerator for quite some time by putting it in a glass with some water. It's essentially like taking a cutting of a houseplant, and it sometimes even will grow roots. And so then you can get more parsley. And that is, in addition to being a food, it's a pleasant smelling herb. And beings from the spiritual realm who aren't used to being in the material realm it's awkward, but it's like we smell weird to them. They're not excited to like take physical form. I just want to fix this. That's gonna bug me. So they don't like being in the physical world and having like unpleasant smells. So that's one of the other reasons that it's nice to burn a candle, because it's like kind of burns up any dust and errant smells that you didn't mean to have in the room. If there's anything, this is my kitchen, so I kind of like cook and stuff. There's a stove, but it's like, but then, so parsley is like a nice smelling herb. It's pretty light, and it also is extremely nutritious. It's a generally positive thing. So it's meant to be as a shared offering, not like the offerings in the circle that are something that like, they're meant to be given completely to the entity, but these offerings are meant to share. And then I have, for my own personal protection, I have mugwort and sage, which are taken from my own garden back in, months and months ago. It's wintertime right now, and then that's a silver cup. Silver is a symbolic metal that is protective sometimes, right? And this is a piece of coral from the coral reef. I don't actually know why I chose that to put, but it was just sitting next to my sink. It actually came with the house I live in. Like when I moved in, it was sitting on the sink, and I like it. I think it's probably not that cool to grab a piece of coral nowadays, since it's like a depleted resource, because the pH balance of the ocean is changing, making it so that coral is decaying faster than it used to. If you zoom in real close and look at it, it's actually tiny, tiny shells of all these animals stuck together, I believe. And yeah, so then I've separated out these books. So these are books that are specifically about something that I might need to read. You know, I don't really need to read anything, but I am going to be in the circle for hours. It's until that candle finishes burning. So, you know, this is a book about basically very light reading. It's basically a reference book that is about demons, and demons being sort of a catch-all term for entities, spiritual entities. And then it's like, you know, Nietzsche's will to power. Not necessarily, but it is nonfiction, but I don't really need it for the ritual or anything, but it's just like something I sometimes flip through. And then Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune. It's a really good book to study exactly that topic, psychic self-defense. So this is a protection circle. It is something I might want to read through just for like moral support if it gets weird. And then this is the uses of enchantment. It is about sort of a meta book that is about fairy tales. It's not a fairy tale, but it is about the human invention of fairy tales and what they mean psychologically to us. And then I have these books, which are just totally fiction. One is The Odyssey by Homer, and the other one is Grimm's Fairy Tales. So if I want to read, you know, sometimes if I'm in this circle for hours, I might just want to entertain myself. And I've decided I'm definitely not going to be like surfing the internet, because it'll just distract me in a certain type of way. I don't mind being distracted, but I want to be distracted in a certain type of way. And then I have my own journal. I might be writing notes or something in, right? So this is a certain sigil. I'm going to cover it up somewhat. It doesn't matter if somebody figured out exactly what I'm doing, but I've just been told not to make it obvious. And this is like something I could show you because it's sort of unclear exactly what it is, but that is a paper to write notes on, which I might then burn in the burnt offerings container over there. So, and then that's like, you know, today's date, tonight's date, as the case may be, and a symbolic knife. I have a real knife too, if need be, but you know, it is a symbol of wisdom, and the element of air is a knife, but that's a letter opener. And a feather, symbol of communication. So I had to match the one that is in the summoning triangle, I have inside on my end the feather as well. And, you know, it's a statue. It's just a little avatar for me. I thought about it, and I found this at a thrift store, but it's like, I consider it a symbol of myself, you know? Crane, kind of preening and cleaning itself. I don't know if that's, read into that too much, but then I have like my glasses and a pen and a lighter, just tools, right? Okay. So, oh, I gotta make a little note to self that I can't like scooch on my pillow, because I don't want to, for one thing, knock around the salt everywhere, but I also don't want to knock over these items. So these are just functional items over here. These are things that are just like literally might be useful. So I'm going to be in here a long time. So I have like water, some carrot juice if I want to drink something sweet. I'm purposely avoiding having like an animal product that I eat, because that's another thing, is that I don't know this spiritual entity really, so I don't want to offend whatever sensibilities it may have. There are some spiritual entities that would be like a demon that would be totally into me eating meat or something like that, but this is very little animal products. So there is egg white in that little energy bar thing, but I think it's fine. And then, paper towels, a glass for water, and, I don't want to be like TMI, but this is like a heavy jar that's difficult to knock over because it's meant to be like a flower vase. And that's because if I'm going to be here a long time and sometimes drink liquids, I might have to pee. So don't mean to have a weird jar of urine sitting around, but that might happen. I don't know how I'm going to be here. To be honest, I sort of dehydrated myself to avoid that very possibility when I was preparing for this. I also showered and like washed my hair for the same reason. Like, to spiritual entities, we are just like so weird. We're very strange humans. So sometimes we smell really weird. So for the same purpose, I also have these herbs in like pill form so I can eat them so that my body odor will continue to smell. I've already been eating them for a few days. So this is, sorry, covering up the lens with my finger right there. But ashwagandha is, it makes cortisol levels go lower so that I won't be as like afraid if anything kind of weird happens. I won't have like a fear reaction as strongly if I'm under the influence of ashwagandha. And, in like Indian medicine, some people believe ashwagandha to have some mystical, it's like supposed to do something to you that is literally like magical. And then this is like a one pill. You can see those orange pills right there, but it's like it has those things in it, which is basically like turmeric, black pepper, garlic, and ginger. So those are like aromatic herbs. And then this is like similar, where the things in it has like it has like Chinese skullcap and passion flower and L-theanine. L-theanine's pretty much in like tea. So it's kind of like drinking tea or drinking like an herbal tea, but it's like in pill form, and that's in there too. And then this is celery. Celery makes human body odor really pleasant, and I've been taking celery pills for quite some time. And also I just like eat celery. I eat like tons of celery every day. So, but I might later just continue just to keep it going. Like if I'm going to be here for hours and like take those. And then this is ketamine, legal nowadays. So I have some ketamine if I want to put myself in a little bit more of a trance-like state. And what's good about ketamine is it is not speed, but it also is difficult for me to sleep. I won't fall asleep if I take ketamine, but I do become very relaxed. And so that's where, and then I have oxytocin basically in nasal spray form. So you can't take a pill for oxytocin because your stomach acid will destroy it. So oxytocin in nasal spray form becomes like it goes directly into your blood, and it has an effect on humans that makes them sort of feel included socially. Like it makes you feel more social and relaxed and like comfortable around other people. So my thinking is that interacting with this entity will be a little more comfortable because I'm sort of don't know what to expect, and I want to be more personable and friendly. And then this is like a similar thing. This is a protein peptide that is developed in Russia in the 1990s called CMAX, which makes your memory and cognition better. It's a nootropic basically. And then it also reduces anxiety. So I have several things reducing anxiety, which is like, I don't feel a lot of anxiety right now, but I'm assuming. And then I have this general first aid kit. And then, over here, speaking of first aid, I have yarrow oil, which instantly stops blood clotting. You might want to keep some on hand, even if you're not summoning demons. This particular demon likes the smell of sandalwood, from what I have communicated with it, and also likes the smell of horsetail oil. So, and then this is just rubbing alcohol basically in this little spray bottle. So I think that is everything. Then I have the tarot cards. Yeah, I think I've talked about every single aspect of the ritual. So I might turn the camera back on to talk about anything else that pops in my head. But for now, I'm going to stop the camera so that I can do some meditation and some other things that are part of the ritual that I have been asked not to discuss on camera.